Welcome, everyone. I am Layla Goshi, editor of Baladi Magazine, and I am so happy today to welcome Nihaya Abu-Rayyan and Devin George Atallah, who are the two of the editors of a wonderful guide called the CURCUM's Trees, a Decolonial Healing Guide for Community Health Workers. And we will be discussing that shortly. I'd like to read the bios of Nihaya and Devin now. Nihaya is a psychosocial supervisor for community health workers at the Najah Center through the CURCUM Collective, a Palestinian collective for decolonial healing. Ms. Abu-Rayyan focuses on guiding, educating, and supporting the community health workers as they engage in a complex process of providing psychosocial support to their patients. In addition to her work with CURCUM, she is also a teaching member in Dulwich Center faculty in Adelaide. Previously, Ms. Abu-Rayyan was a clinical social worker at the Treatment and Rehabilitation Center for Victims of Torture and a prison counselor supervisor at UN Women. Nowadays, she works as a freelancer psychotherapist and teacher in private clinics and academies in Palestine. Ms. Abu-Rayyan has a diploma in narrative therapy, and she works as a senior narrative therapist, teacher, and supervisor. Ms. Abu-Rayyan is particularly interested in indigenous and decolonial approaches of healing and justice praxis in Palestine. And welcome, Nihaya. Devin George Atallah is a Palestinian from the Shatat diaspora, currently living and working in Boston on the lands of the Wampanoag, Massachusetts, Nipmuc, and other indigenous peoples of the northeast of Turtle Island in the nation-state of USA, with his beloved children and community. Atallah's indigenous roots return to the mountains, trees, and kinships of the village of Beit Jala in occupied Palestine. Atallah is an assistant professor of psychology at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. He is a researcher, scholar, activist, and healer dedicated to transnational decolonial movements and Palestinian liberation. So welcome, Devin. Welcome both. It is wonderful to have you here. And Devin, I think you had mentioned we would like to have a grounding before we move forward.
Yes, thank you. It's an honor to be here and to be able to speak about our work in Palestine. And as we know, it's a moment of genocide, a genocide that is rooted back decades, although it is a moment of uncovering, a moment of apocalypse. You know, apocalypse in Greek means uncovering, means a revealing, and we are bearing witness to the level, the scale, and the horror of the colonial violence waged against our bodies and lands, and we are grieving, and we are raging, we are in anguish, and I thought it would be good to just begin with a few lines from one of our national poets, Mahmoud Darwish, and what he wrote in 1973, decades ago, and how much it is in many ways more applicable today than it was even then. This is from Journal of an Ordinary Grief. And it's from one of the last chapters of it. And he called it Silence for the Sake of Gaza. Again, this was in 1973. I'm not going to read the whole section, but I'll read the part where he says, the enemy may defeat Gaza. The stormy sea might overwhelm a small island. They might cut down all her trees. They might break her bones. They might plant their tanks in the bellies of her women and children, or they might toss her into the sand, into the sea, into blood. But Gaza will not repeat the lies Gaza will not say yes to the conquerors, and she will continue to erupt. It is not death, it is not suicide. It is Gaza's way of announcing she is worthy of life.
Thank you so much for reading that. Thank you.
And Nihaya, did you want to say anything about where you're calling in from the West Bank, from anything that's moving you now?
Thank you, Layla. Thank you, Devin. This time of genocide makes me all the time feel the history is repeated itself, even after 75 years. And what comes to my mind in this lately, that we need to learn from our grandfather and mothers and from our ancestors, to ask them not just to tell us the story of genocide from 1948 until today, to 2024. We need to ask them to learn us how they succeeded in continue, even of the genocide they passed through, how they continue on their lives, how they continue in clinging to love our land and love our ground and love our life, and stay connected with our national issue and our national case, even of the oppression. So I think Gazan people also need now to reconnect with their elderly people, to teach from them, to learn from them again, how they can overcome this genocide, even of all the pain they had in their hearts and minds, and even in their streets and homes. This is how we can heal nowadays.
That is very good advice, actually. That is very good advice. Thank you for those comments. Yeah. I want to continue. The reason I wanted to discuss these topics with you today is because I am very impressed with your project, the CURCUM's Trees Decolonial Healing Guide. I'm going to pull the cover of the workbook on the screen now. But here I'll have to get to my screen. But what I was most interested in, actually, excuse me, 1 minute, I'm having to pull up my screen. Here we are. Now, can you see the cover of CURCUM's Trees on the screen? Okay. So I read through this and found it to be very relevant, even to me in some way, and I am not a community health worker. And I know you wrote this before October 7th. And we'll get into that discussion of, maybe the intentions before and the intentions now. But I wanted just to look at the first couple of paragraphs of your introduction, because I was so struck by what you had to say about the workbook. And it really helped me center myself as I began reading through the workbook. You say, this Decolonial Healing Guide is an invitation to you, dear community member and worker, born from our deep respect for you as an invaluable and impactful Palestinian community health worker. We invite you on a journey through a series of metaphorical trees representing a series of critical reflections and opportunities for growth. As a collective of Palestinian community workers, healers, activists, researchers, psychologists, mental health professionals, and community health workers ourselves, we as the CURCUM Collective understand in our bodies and in the depth of our minds and hearts that the work you do as community health workers in so many ways asks the impossible from you. How can a team of a few community health workers promote health and wellness in their community against such long-standing historical and dehumanizing conditions shaped by settler colonial conditions? The Israeli occupation system, displacement, cycles of poverty, and violent interlocking systems of oppression. We hope that this decolonial healing guide resonates with you and uplifts your work in meaningful ways as you work against colonial forces of destruction. And this hit me too, because I'm not a community health worker, but working to educate others when you're in the Palestinian diaspora, which Devin, you may relate to this too. There is a definite tension and need for self-reflection and self-healing sometimes in combating issues around Palestine, even when we're in diaspora. So it may be not as critical as it might be for community health workers, but it did reach me too, is what I'm trying to say. And I just wanted to touch base on the second paragraph, which I'll invite one of you to explain how the word CURCUM is actually also an acronym in Arabic, which stands for other concepts as well. So would one of you like to describe that?
Sure, I can go ahead quickly, and then Nihaya, please add anything. But I would like to say that the CURCUM workbook that we did, just to be very, clear, that we wrote this with many colleagues. Nihaya and I did this with, I think we were a total team of 8 people. With Dr. Caesar Hakim, Dr. Hana Masoud, Dr. Yusuf Al-Ajarma, a community health worker, Aya Darwish, one of my graduate students, Rayyan Al-Fatafta, and also Dr. Abir Musleh, and then of course Nihaya, Abu-Rayyan, and myself. So this was the team that we worked on it together with. And we chose the word CURCUM. It means turmeric in Arabic, and for the book. And it's also a plant that reminds us of our grandmother's hands, just as Nihaya spoke to in our introduction today, the importance of turning to our ancestors for guidance, both as an orientation, but also in practice. This is what it looks like in practice. In many ways, even though we are mental health workers or psychologists or social workers, our training, our first training is from our grandparents. It's from our elders, like in terms of how we heal. And so that, invoking that and even our name, it feels very important in this way. And we call ourselves CURCUM also as an acronym, as you mentioned, Leila. The first letter, the COS, stands for karama, or dignity. The second, or the first R is for refusal, for rifa, or kifa, for struggle, mukawama, for homeland. Am I missing one? I think that's it. And
yeah, I think that's it.
And then overall, but right now that's actually more for the title for the book. And anything as moving forward, Nihaya and I and others have talked about wanting to continue to respond to the moment and continue to shift how we're understanding things. So, but that was just for the title of the workbook, how we came to it.
Okay. So, my first question about this is how and when did you all, as community health workers, psychologists, and social workers, and academic colleagues, when and how did you decide to develop this decolonial healing guide? What made you think that there was a need for this?
Yeah, do you want to start? And what's meaningful about?
I want you to respond for
You want me
this.
to start?
Yeah.
I think I don't know how you're feeling, Nihaya. I think even talking about the past right now feels heavy because we're such in a certain moment, you know. So for me, I think briefly I'll say we wanted to make the CURCUM workbook because for me personally, I know that the mental health a concept and practices that were handed down to us in our trainings, and we're not only like culturally insensitive or inaccurate, they were problematic and carceral. They were arresting in terms of our possibilities for healing, and we needed to offer something different for our communities and ourselves, and we needed to do that in collective and in conversation. And we kind of, I think we searched for each other. We searched for other Palestinian healers and academics and writers and social workers who also were questioning, who also were practicing refusals, who were also wore our decolonial attitude at the forefront of how we approached mental health and healing. And along the way, we found each other. I don't know if, Nihaya, do you want to add anything to that? Does that resonate to you?
I mean, in my opinion, CURCUM is important to like an invitation for every person who has a work as a Palestinian, not just community health worker. It's the voice of the identity of being a Palestinian, not just a worker or not practicing a job. You're doing a resistance action by practicing your job, your daily life role, by connected it to with the valuable action and creating a meaning that connected with our roots, because everything in the colonial system try to uproot us, and we need to connect it to nourish our roots by our work. And this is not, it's happen in a collective situation. This is how we feel that CURCUM can play a part in creating a muqawama, a resistance action to our mental state and to our also to every work we are doing on the ground with our people and with our community.
Thank you. And, before we started recording, I had mentioned to Devin, I had heard from, I've heard people occasionally in the diaspora community say that, they don't want to seek treatment because the person won't understand them, or might orientalize what they're going through. So I found this very fascinating. And so for viewers who are new to the topic, can you explain the difference between a typical, that we would say in the West, healing guide, and one that is decolonized? So what are the differences?
You want
Yeah.
to start, Nihaya? What do you want me to say? Are you pushing me? Okay. I'm trying to think how to answer this question because it's hard to speak about it in English.
Mhm.
It's hard to speak about it in any language because part of what working into a decolonial way of healing is one that is content with the end of this world. is content with understanding that it's about endings, it's about abolition, it's about understanding that because of the level of evil in the world at this point at which, I'm speaking with such heavy words because my heart is heavy right now, right? So I'm being real, but because of the level of destruction of what colonialism has proven to demand, the level of grief that colonialism wants, pushing loss across the landscape at such a level. Najah Kevorkian, who's a mentor, a inspiration to many Palestinian feminists, right now she's talking about Ashlah, which means the scattering of human flesh, right? And how what Palestinians are up against is a colonial world that is content with a display of not even suffering, a display of scattered human flesh over and over and over again. It's like the whipping of the Black body, the lynching of the indigenous body, upset, angry, punishing of us just for surviving, right? Like we should be dead. The colonizer wants us dead or gone. And so when we're still here and we still fight, the colonial world comes for us. And now it's proving it's at such a level, any kind of healing that the colonial world offers within the frameworks of the colonial world is, we read that now more than ever as clearly violent. And we are suspect. And so we bring that kind of level of criticism that is rooted in our grief. And a decolonial way into healing is one that understands that, yes, I am guilty for walking into a checkpoint and looking at and responding to a colonizer who says, why are you here? Why are you in, often we'll say something like, why are you in Samaria or something like that? Or they'll give a name to the West Bank, or why are you visiting Israel? And I'll say, no, I'm not visiting Israel. I am in Palestine. I'm visiting family in my homeland, right? There's a way that, what does the continual defiance and the pushing back look like in the mental health system and how we heal? We also have to say, no, I'm not using your terms. I'm changing the terms of the conversation. I'm changing the landscape of my healing because of the facts on the ground of your colonial violence impacts even my ability to have autonomy and sovereignty over my healing journey. Right? So it's building capacity in our collectives, rooting ourselves in our lands, because all the power of and the promise of healing goes back to our lands. And that's what decolonialism ultimately is about land-based resistance, land-based knowledges, land-based healing practices that we allow to guide us in the face of so much loss and carnage. I don't know, Nihaya, I can go on, so I'm stopping there, but how is this resonating with you, Nihaya?
Yeah, when I talk about the colonial, I feel that I connected with my own identity, with my own self, to use my language to describe my situation in my own words, to give the terms of healing from the point of view of it's not just a term, it's a perspective, it's a right. It's a decolonizing from the discourse that try to target us in every single action for Palestinian, and especially for our mentality when we are in the schools, in the street, everywhere. We are taught to think the Western thinking tools, and they try to in their tools they try to disconnect us from our own tools. But decolonial, that means for me as a Palestinian, that's an action of being you, to an action of liberation for your mentality. It is a different kind of coloniality when they not use the gun and the military actions, but they use how they know very well how to occupy our minds. This is decolonial for me, is to liberate our minds, and this is what we can do by our awareness to ourselves and to connect it with our own Palestinian healing tools from our heritage and from our techniques and beliefs, and not just following the other. That's a continuous for occupation. Following is a continuous process for the coloniality.
I wonder, it's just hit me to ask this question. What role does knowledge of history have to play in this? Because I find that I think in any type of conversation, if you're trying to converse or explain, and the person is working with a different historical background or historical knowledge, or maybe we might even say propaganda knowledge, it's hard to communicate, right? Sometimes. So would you say those involved in decolonial healing need to have that awareness, I guess, of the importance of a historical knowledge? I don't know if I'm making sense, but does that, you know what I'm, like, have you ever encountered when you were first developing your skills, either as a community health worker or in the realm of psychology, did you bump up against barriers where you felt like people weren't understanding the historical realities that you were coming from?
Look, many practitioners and mental health practitioners and social work, they deal with their job like a job. And not all of them, they just looking for the historical heritage, like a political issue. But when they have awareness for their identity, so our identity is constructed within a time. And this time, it's not apart from our past, from our heritage. And when we acknowledge this heritage, we can find our tools to continue developing and creating our own meanings of healing and of work at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we work with Palestinian people, we need to assert and to do assertiveness for their rights and existence and their skills and their meanings and beliefs. Because when they connected with these components that they gain from the heritage from their ancestors, granddads, fathers, elders, and also from history, it can give them the strength that they can do and help them with the original meanings and senses that help them to do their work, but in a different way. Have belonging to this land, belonging to the national identity, belonging to our history is can draw or can create or construct our liberation actions, even in mental or community or social base. Without this awareness, we cannot do we cannot come forward. We will just deal with the moment, and the discourse of just focus on the moment, it's a Western knowledge. Just focus on the here and now, and not belonging to your past, and not connecting your past with your future. That's not meaningful for us as Palestinians. So not all are aware for this historical heritage, but we need to highlight the importance of this awareness for our historical heritage in community work and psychology and mental issues.
Yes.
To add anything?
Yes, I want to add, I don't want to add, I want to uplift. Like, Nihaya, what you're saying, I'm like taking notes here because this is why I love being in connection with you. The question was about was about history, knowing history, knowledge of history, right? And I think you helped us understand that it's about belonging to land, right? So it's about and understanding your cause, understanding. And I'm using the word cause inspired from what you're speaking to, and also inspired by, again, Darwish, because from his book, from the one I quoted earlier, Journal of Ordinary Grief, where this chapter is called The Homeland Between Memory and History. And it starts with a question: what is homeland? And he says, so what is homeland? It is not a question you can answer and then go on your way. Your cause and your life are one. Your cause and your life are one. Right? So, and before all this and beyond it is your identity. So he says, so before it and beyond it is your identity. So if you go to therapy saying, my identity is Palestinian, how does that connect to your cause? What is your cause? How does that connect to your land, to your homeland? What is your homeland? Are you displaced? Are you in exile? What is your connection to that exile? I think mental health as a concept is a Western concept. We don't think about mental health. I'm a mental health worker. I don't think about mental health. I resist that, right? I think about, what is your connection to land? What is your connection to belonging? What is your connection to your cause? How are you living your purpose? How is your purpose connected to our greater cause, our Palestinian liberation cause, which is what it even means to be Palestinian. Palestinian is not an ethnic identity. We're not just an ethnicity. We are a cause, right? So there's a way to understand that it's a full-time job to understand that. You gotta be doing your work. And then, of course, if you find yourself, your any kind of sickness is rooted in that. And when I think of like this question of memory or history, I think of the importance of right to memory, where we can be in a refugee camp in the Bethlehem area, where where Nihaya and I have worked in the past together, and some of the people we're working with can walk to the top of Bejala Hill and look over toward Al-Kabu village, toward Zakaria village, toward Ras Abu Amar, all the different villages that were stolen by Israel. And that is that's the homeland. So you can't even access memory. The memory is material. The memory is stolen as a living land. So how do you know your history? If it's a right-based issue, right? The issue is not a mental health issue. It's a right. It's a human. It's a injustice issue. So that's what it is. So you, as a mental health worker, you don't only need to know history. No knowledge of history will help you if you don't understand it from the perspective of liberation, a perspective of this is not upheld. This person isn't sick, right? This person has a cause to move toward liberation, which I actually, let's say if you're not Palestinian and you're working with someone or all of us in different ways, we are all complicit in different ways in the ongoing injustice, right? So we need each other. It's not like a Palestinian needs help from anybody in that sense to be freed, right? But a Palestinian needs to be accompanied in a journey of liberation, and everyone has their own work to do, to address that. So yeah, so I think I'm thinking of understanding the materiality of the oppression and how that's of the history, the materiality of the ways our bodies and our lands are evidence of the stolen memory. And so fighting to get the memory back is a land-based return. It's not just, it's in our minds, but it's in the struggling to fight for the liberation of our lands. It's taking our lands back is a mental health intervention. And I remember this even when I think of my grandmother, my Siti, or even my Amto, who will say things, who have taught me about the importance of this practice, saying things like, you can never learn. Why are you studying psychology? You can never learn that in school. You can't learn how to really heal people in school. That's something that happens, you need to talk to Allah, you need to talk to God, you need to focus on the Rahani practices, which are practices of our indigenous healing practices, healing of the soul. And here's a flag. My grandmother in Chile gave me my first Palestinian flag to say, let's go to the protest together. And she, in her 70s, wanted to, these are healing practices. Yeah. This is to say, we are going to fight for our dignity and our right to exist and to resist. This is protective. This is medicine, right? And so I think part of the challenge of understanding a decolonial approach to healing, we have to turn upside down all of our understandings of what it even is the concept of mental health and how that itself is rooted in colonial frameworks.
Thank you both of you for those answers, because you're actually helping me become aware of my colonial assumptions, having learned them here. And so it's not what I heard that really spoke to me. A lot of it did, but one phrase was, it's not that the person has a mental health problem, it's a disconnection from the land and a disconnection from being able to apply that memory or make that memory real.
Yes, how do we live justice in our bodies, right? And in our lands, in our relationships, and in our psyches. It's like a living justice. Knowing that this is something actually Cornel West has said, which I appreciated. He was like, if tenderness is what love looks like in private, then justice is what love looks like in public. Right? So there's a way, how can anyone be well without love? Like that would be absurd to imagine. Any human can live without love. So of course, so that's the practice, right? It's understanding how do we center love and center the way we know the only thing that heals anyone is love. And so that's what this is, in the end, what it's about.
Do you have anything else to add, Nihaya, about that?
Just what came to my mind, that we are always repeated the saying that we are love our land, we are loving in our life. All the time we are alive, we are in love with life. That means we are there is a Palestinian resistance slogan, which is that we are a martyrdom projects, because martyrdom being in our Palestinian perspective, that it is a very high level of acknowledgement and dignity and continuity of life. And I can add on it, we are a projects of life, not just projects of martyrdoms. And we are keen to keep continuing in our lives by keep continuing our belonging and love practices toward this love, toward this land, even by nourishing it with our patience, by our refusal actions and resistance, or even by many years that Palestinian people, from both women, children, and men, are spent in the prisons and or by our blood that we give for our land. And by the way, today, just more or less around 2 hours ago, we lost Walid Daqqa.
Allah yirhamu, yes.
Palestinian prisoners who got martyred because of the unhelp, they did not help him to go to hospital and to take medication. So even our spirits are gifts for our land, and this is how we express, and this is how we liberate our feelings and our existence. This is what they cannot loot it from us. How we think about the issue of being a Palestinian. They cannot loot it. The colonial systems cannot loot it. Like our home and land, they looted it. But how we explain, how we understand every single action we do in our life, it is connected with our own perspective, which is connected to the liberation perspective. And also we always say we love freedom. And yes, freedom is a kind of love, not just an action of liberation from the colonial system, but also it's a way of love.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you for bringing Brother Walid's spirit into our space. After 4 decades of imprisonment, so many people had been organizing around his release because of cancer, and he had survived so much torture. He just passed away a few hours ago. And as Nihaya was saying, when we understand the connection between freedom and sacrifice, and the role of what do our martyrs, how do our martyrs love us?
Mm-hmm.
And how do we love our martyrs? Is a for me, one of the things that I'm thinking of now is just how much, based on what you were saying, Nihaya, is how much the sacrifice of this of an ending, like martyrdom is an ending, right? It's a transformation of the ending into life-giving affirmation, into um, literally like fire that transforms material into a different state. Martyrdom transforms our collective body from the state of incarceration into a state of freedom. Right? So it's martyrs give us the energy we need for freedom and their transformation from this realm to a different realm, because of their love and their dedication, their commitment. Yet, I can't remember who said this, but it is important for us to remember how the earth doesn't need very much fire. The earth needs a lot of water. The earth doesn't need a lot of fire. Right? And we as Palestinians are asked to have too much fire. There's too much fire in our communities. We're burdened by that. When right now we need water. We need the possibilities for relief. We need love. We don't need more martyrs. Right? This is the pushing of that is part of the injustice. We need relief. We need freedom now. And the continual way that Palestinians, especially those in Gaza, but also in the West Bank and those in prison, those closer to the line of colonial violence, are forced to put or asked to put their lives on the line for the greater liberation struggle, is something that needs to be ended. I don't know, I think part of what I'm struggling with is the way that the world seems to be so okay. So part of what being complicit to me says is the world is recruited into this colonial cult of death as the world order. And I reject that.
Thank you for that. And you know, as you said, we don't need any more martyrs. What something that I thought about was, the doctors in Gaza that work so hard and actually sometimes, met their own fate, even recently with Al Shifa Hospital. So that, does bring me back to, I think prior to October 7th, your interest was in helping those who were trying to help others, and how can you help how can you help a health worker heal themselves? I feel like now we're even in a more dire, that question is even more dire, if I saying that correctly. I just wonder if you both have thought to that next level in terms of, I think the risk has definitely heightened for health workers in Gaza, but maybe across the West Bank as well. And how would you advise, or can you advise someone to care for themselves in that situation?
Thank you for that question. I don't even know if I'm at a place to think forward, but I do want to spend a moment on it, and wondering if this would be a good way to transition to closing. Maybe we could end with a poem.
I'm sending it to you to know what song what poem we need to
Yes. Would you read it, Nihaya, to close us out?
in Arabic.
In Arabic first, yeah. And I think before you do that, I think that what I would say, Layla, to your question about moving from how do we care for those who are caring for others, I think both right now, you know, we're all how do we what do we need to know? What do we need to become right now? It feels impossible to answer that. I feel like recently I sat on the streets and protest, risking arrest, writing the lawyer's name on my arm alongside other activists. I mean, I think we need to be active. We need to be shutting things down right now. We need to be joining campaigns. For me, we need healing. Of course, we need to support each other. Sometimes that means we need talk therapy and we need individual support and psychotherapy. And that's great. You know, we should be, and we're doing that a lot actually still. You know, Nihaya just spent a full day working as a therapist. And often providing even pro bono counseling, to Palestinian activists in particular when I can. So yes, we're doing that. And yet we also need to be stockpiling our energies for ongoing resistance and asking each other, what do I need to stay strong for the long fight ahead? And how do I continue to nurture my energy to be able to continue to resist? For me, so much of that answer has to be stay close to love, stay very close to love, and help each other do that. And Nihaya, do you want to add anything to that about where you feel like you're called to, or you want to just end with a poem? Where are you at? I know, again, part of this practice, what we need now is to know our limits. And it's late at night for you. It's Ramadan, and maybe it's time to close. What do you think?
Maybe it's time to close, and there is a limited time, but in liberation, there is no boundaries, there is no limits. So if I would like to end with an Arabic song, which is an Arabic poem also for Ahmed Kabour. And what I needed to make sure about that the invitation of giving a value for every single simple action anyone do, and not feel hopelessness or helplessness, because these frustrations will deconstruct the sense of keep going on struggling. The war keep going. That means in parallel line, the struggle and the muqawama and the refusal must be continue and ongoing in parallel with the time of war and in the time of coloniality and colonialism. So we need to keep going and not feel frustrated that nothing happened on the ground. Still we are colonized, but we still also resist. This is what we need to nourish our spirits, actually. For this, the نبض الضفة, the name of the poem. في الضفة لي أطفال 7، أصغرهم يرضع تاريخا، أوسطهم اسمه جيفارا، أكبرهم ثائر في الضفة. يا كل العالم فلتعلم أطفالي اليتم، زرعوا الحقل ورود حمراء، بسواعدهم حصدوا الخير، أطفالي وامرأتي وأنا. أصرخ نصرخ فليمسي وطني حرة فليرحل محتلي فليمسي وطني حرة فليرحل محتلي يا كل العالم فلتعلم يا كل العالم وطني مسبي لكني الطلقة وحجارة أطفال الضفة كالطلقة في المدفع هل تسمع هل تسمع هل تسمع لينا كانت طفلة تصنع غدها لينا سقطت لكن دمها كان يغني للجسد المصلوب الغاضب للقدس ويافا وأريحا للشجر الواقف في غزة للنهر الهاجر في الأردن للجسد الغاضب في الضفة يا نبض الضفة لا تهدأ علمها ثورة حطم قيدك اجعل لحمك جسر العودة. And this is meaningful and connected deeply with our conversation here about our CURCUM. In English, in the West Bank, I have 7 children. The youngest is breastfeeding. The middle one's name is Jivara. The eldest of them is a rebel in the West Bank. All the world, teach my children to be orphans. They planted the field with red roses. With their help, with their hands, they raised goodness. My children, my women, and me scream. We are screaming. Let my country be free. Let my occupiers leave. Let them go. Let them be free. Let the occupier leave. Oh, all the world, let you know, all the world, let you know, my country is captive, but the bullet, but I am like a bullet. The stone of the children of the West Bank are like bullets in a cannon. Do you hear? Do you hear? Do you hear? Lena was a child, creating her tomorrow. Lena fell, but her blood was singing. It was singing. She was singing for the anger, crucified body, for Jerusalem, for Jaffa and Jericho, for trees standing in Gaza, for the migratory river in Jordan, to the anger body in the West Bank. O plus of the West Bank, do not calm down. I declare it revolution. Break your chains, make your flesh a bridge to return back.
Thank you.
Yeah, so beautiful, so powerful. We needed that. I needed that.
Thank you. And who is the poet, or who is the writer?
It is a song for Ahmed Kabour. He is a Lebanese Palestinian singer, and a poet is Hassan Daher.
Okay.
The poet is Hassan Daher. He's a Palestinian from Nablus.
Thank you. I will link that with our video so others can access it again too. So, well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Devin and Nihaya, for coming and discussing your decolonial guide, but also discussing so much more about where we are right now. I have learned actually a lot in a very short time about my own thinking process in regard to, you know, how we think about mental health. And I hope we continue to have conversations. I'll be reaching out with more questions. So, all right. Well, we will close for now, and thank you all.
Thank you so much. Good to
you.
meet you, Leila.
Thank you.
Good to see you,
Nice to
Nihaya.
meet you.
Assalam.
Thank you.
Thank you. يعطيكم العافية. سلامات.